And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 267. Today we are talking about the Selective Colour Challenge. So yes, a couple of weeks back I did a whole podcast all about the notion of selective colour, when to use it and when you probably shouldn't. And then I set a challenge. So we've had about 11 people send in images. We're going to go through them and see what everybody's come up with. Has anybody really grabbed it and got, really nailed the idea? Or has anybody actually gone so spectacularly wrong that they'll be losing smug points on it? Well, stick around and we'll find out. Yes, and welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode, wrong. Yes. Episode 267 of Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. If you are looking to improve your understanding of photography, then you are in the right place. If you're looking to understand your technical understanding of how to run podcasts, this is probably wrong. Never going to work. Meanwhile, anyway, we happen to be live here on YouTube. Leave me a comment. Let me know you're here. Tell me what the weather's doing. I can see the chat's going already. So join in. Let's take a quick look, see who we've got in. Lisa says, hello from a cold and rainy Maryland. Susan says, hi from a decidedly chilly but sunny Kakubri. We even had a little snow on the hills I can see from my window today. Yes, and here in Castle Douglas, just 9 miles along the road from Kakubri, it's been a beautifully, but as you say, chilly winter's day, but rather nice. Lots of little frost about as well, but it's nice to see the sunshine after so much wet, it's true. Lisa says, must be pretty to see the snow-topped hills. And actually it is, yes. Robert's joined us, says, howdy all from a cold and partially sunny North Scotland. Oh, you made your way all the way up to the north then, Robert. Excellent. We are on the way to the airport now. The internet is pretty spotty and we'll probably catch up later. Okay. Meg says, hello everyone. Nadia says, hi everyone from a cold but bright Fife. And Anne joins us and says, hello everyone too. Excellent. Yes. Yes, so Anne and Robert, normally located in Texas, are in fact in Scotland. Mention a little bit about that later on, I think. So, what else we got? Susan's chatting to Robert there. So, yes. So this podcast then is about the Selective Colour Challenge. Now, selective colour is one of these things which I've always felt a bit not really too sure about it. The thing is that it is one of these things that if you do a lot of online competitions, you belong to groups like sites like PhotoCrowd, ViewBug, Guru Shots, then sooner or later, selective colour, spot colour, colour splash. These are all different words for the same idea, which essentially that it's a black and white photo, but with a spot of actual colour in it. And these contests crop up an awful lot. Now, we've been running this podcast for 5.5 years, thereabouts, and it's one of these things that I kind of mentioned once or twice briefly in passing, usually in a kind of slightly derisory tone of voice, and skimmed past. But Robert in Texas, now currently in Scotland, heading to the airport, asked me to essentially set the challenge for November. It was something that he wanted to find out more about. So back in episode 264, I gave a lot more information about not just how to do it, but when you can try and make it work, and probably more importantly, when it's not going to work. So it's one. Sorry, I'm slightly distracted. Robert said actually just we've had a wonderful time. Unfortunately, there's only about 8 hours of daylight. Hard to photograph in the dark. Yes, of course we are in Scotland, which is considerably further north than Texas. And if you're up in the north of Scotland, then even less hours of daylight. It's true. And then Anne says Scotland is a bit colder than Texas as well, but we've managed. Marilyn joins us here. Says, hi everyone, with a -9 degrees centigrade, 15 degrees Fahrenheit, Colorado. Well, it's even colder in Colorado than it is in Scotland then. We've got a Josiah Malone, 7182, says, greetings from a cloudy and cold New Hampshire. April here. Oh, right. Okay. So April's changed her email address. Just stopping and saying, got to check this out when I get home. Okay. Right. So, I'm guessing then that April is using somebody else, I don't know, using somebody else's phone or just logging on something else, but is rushing past. Or is it a different April? No, Malone. Yes, no. It's our normal April, I think. Getting slightly confused by who's you change when you've got a different. I mean, yeah. Some people have their real names in as their YouTube names, and most people don't. So I'm constantly having to try and remember who's who. And now April's changed her handle there. It's confusing me even more. Oh, John joins us from Ohio as well. Hi, John. Glad you could make it. Okay, so sorry, I hate this table. It's April Malonet. I'm guessing you're doing it on your tablet or your phone or something, hitting with your thumbs. Spell checker not fully kicking in, or predictive text doing different words for you. Yes, it's April. Right, okay. Now, you might have to forgive me. I do have a bit of a cold at the moment, so I will be periodically coughing all the way through as well. Right, so selective colour then. So I set the challenge after talking about it 3 weeks ago, and now we've had 11 people send in images. So we're going to go through the images now. And what becomes quite clear with this is that it's something that most people are struggling with on some level or another, either to make an effective photo out of it, or the number of comments I've had, messages I've had from people saying, I really don't like selective colour, I hate selective colour, this is doing my head in, struggled so much to try and find decent photos, all this kind of thing. And yet, you've still put something in. So you are fully deserving of the bonus 10 smug points that you get just for submitting your images. So yeah, kudos to you just for getting something in. But what I will do is I will go through the photos, we'll look at them, and I'm going to discuss a little bit about which ones are working, which ones could maybe work slightly better, which ones are maybe missing the mark, and which ones are working particularly well. And then at the end of it, I will give my top 3 as usual with these challenges. However, just before I mention that, you will get to have your chance to say which one you think is the best, and that will give whoever wins the viewers vote as such will get a bonus 20 smug points on that. So keep sticking around, there's lots to go on, lots to happen in this particular podcast. So what I will do, let me just tidy up my desktop a little bit here. I will shove that over there, and let's make a start. So I'm going to start with Meg, and so Meg had Meg sent in this one, and she said, this is a flower I took from the back garden at home. This is for the Selective Colour Challenge. So this photo of Meg's purple flower. Now, just to show you here, this is Meg's original. So this is the original photo, and then this is selective colour version. And a little bit of just a clarity here. I to say that I helped Meg do this part. Meg's got her camera on her phone. She takes the photos, but she's not quite so clear on how to do the editing. So she came to me and asked me if I could sort out the spot colour. She knew she wanted to have the flower done in purple. So I thought I would start with this because it's kind of what we kind of tend to typically think of when we're coming to the idea of a spot colour or selective colour challenge. So we take a photo like this, and okay, I've cropped it square as well and made it purple, or just rather black and whited everything that wasn't the purple flower. Now, the question becomes, and this is really the key thing that's going to run, the theme that's going to run all the way through this particular podcast, and it's all about what's at the heart of the notion of a selective colour, which is, generally speaking, a photo is either in colour or it's in black and white. And if you're going to do a selective colour where you're doing that little bit of mix, has the photo been added to in a positive way by using this? Or might it have been better in black and white? Or might it have been better in colour? And actually the selective colour process is actually detracted from what could have been a better photo. Okay. Now, the question is with this. So what happens when we go black and white? We've gone black and white in the background, and this has really drawn all the attention to the flower. But the fact is, when we had the flower against the green leaves, the attention was already drawn directly to the pink flower. Now, this is unedited, but we just if we took the colour photo and we cropped it in, and then we, kind of played around with the contrast a little bit and what have you, there's still a reasonable chance that this would actually, the point of the photo is not just the purple flower, but it's the purple flower against the green foliage. Now, what I've done with this one to try and at least counteract some of the fact that we've lost the green is I've gone black and white, but you'll notice that I've not gone just a straightforward desaturation. I've really boosted the contrast, made it darker as well, kind of. One of the things I talked about 3 weeks ago was the notion that because selective colour is so overpowering, it just grabs all the attention, that when you've got a black and white background, in order to be able to support that level of intense dragging the eye towards it, very often it works better if your black and white background is maybe stronger, there's stronger contrast, that you've got to somehow give it more body, more oomph, in order to be able to carry the weight of the screaming part of the selective colour. Because in a way, that's what selective colour is doing, is it's screaming at you, going, this is where to look at, here, now, you're not allowed to look at anything else, look here, now. Which of course can be quite annoying. So the question is then, is this better? Or would this work as just straightforwardly a black and white photo? I mean, if I open this in Photoshop, now we know that the color photo will work in color, but if I go over here and then just go to the black and white mixer, put it into black and white. Now now at this point we notice that the picture actually gets lost against the background, but I can play around a little bit here. If I take, what are we talking about? I think it's the blue channel. I can lighten and darken the blues. Maybe I could, if I pale that up a bit, because I've got quite a dark background, reds, nothing much going on there, yellows, yeah. Now, what's that? Now, there was there we go, magentas, there we go. And I pull, so say then I'm kind of pushing the blues up and pulling the magentas down. And then this way, I'm making much more of those kind of veins in the leaves, okay? So when you're doing something like this, now what it's all about, because we've lost the colour, all the colour, what we're looking for in order to make it an eye-grabbing photo is it's about contrast, it's about tonal contrast. So for a black and white photo, something like this might work better. But if you are really wanting to make the most of the colour, then the colour generally, most colours work in relationship to other colours. So basically where we're going with that, the point with a photo like this is it works insofar as if somebody's thinking selective colour, I've selected the colour, this was the most important part of the photo. It's not like, I mean, the worst bit of the lot would have been to select the green and just make the the flower black and white. So we've selected the right part of the photo. But there is a level of kind of, so what? Has the picture been enhanced by having selective colour? I would argue that not necessarily. I think you could have made a good photo out of the purple against the green, that's part of the narrative, or you're talking about the tonal contrasts in a black and white photo. So, whereas, although I will say that if you are doing one of these online competitions like Photo Crowd, basically where it's a crowd vote, not an expert vote, but a crowd vote, a lot of people would take a photo like that and probably score it quite highly, because it's clear, it's obvious, there's no subtlety about it. So it's another thing to keep in mind this, which is the difference between who's judging it. So me as a professional photographer, I've got a different standard by which I'm going to judge a selective colour photo than an amateur, or even somebody who's not even doing that. They just take quick photos with their phones and then find the little selective colour button on and go, oh, that's cool. Right? And it is cool for them. That's not a problem. But they're new to it. They haven't become jaded and cynical like the rest of us. So for somebody who thinks selective colour is a cool new fancy thing, then at that point, a picture like this is really going to score quite highly. Whereas for somebody who is a professional photographer who's seen a lot of these kind of things, you really find yourself saying, well, either you want to go for the tonal contrast in black and white, or you're better off going for the colour contrast of the purple and the green. So I hope that kind of gives you a good idea. I thought it was probably a good one to start with because it shows you the dilemma that we're up against and kind of covers quite a bit of ground. Comments here. Susan says, hi Meg, fabulous punchy colour, well done. Nadia says, that's lovely Meg. Lisa says, nice detail Meg. Anne says, love that one Meg, great job. Lisa says, seems to work I think when the background in colour is a little busy. Yeah, there's a notions of if something else is a bit busy, then maybe you tone it down a bit or whatever. But it is about this notion of where's the story. And very often a picture of a flower is in contrast to the greenery that's around it. Or if it's a flower poking out of an urban environment, so against the brickwork or stonework or paving or something like that. Right, so anyway, thanks very much for putting that one in, Meg. I think that kind of gives us a good starting point. So Meg says, thank you very much for your lovely comments. Excellent. Okay, so next one that I want to move on to is Fenris. Now, Fenris, he's one of these, he's never here to sort of actually join in the comments. He does occasionally, he's put some things in for a little bit of the odd competition here and there. I think he tends to watch this on catch up more often. Now, Fenris sent in this one and said, here you go, colour pop from a few years ago that I created to explain to someone what a colour pop was. So these are deck chairs on Brighton Beach. And so this is, rather than a single selective colour, he's actually got 3 selective colours. So essentially, you know, the deck chairs themselves, including the wooden frame, in fact, so you could say 4 colours, are all in colour. The beach itself is, and the beach, the sea, the sky have been done as, have just been black and whited out. This is another one where I kind of think you have to kind of ask yourself, yes, it demonstrates the idea of what selective colour is, but how well is the photo enhanced by or detracted from by having all the different bits in it? And again, if I open this with Photoshop, then you see a couple of different ways I can go about this. And if I duplicate that layer for a moment, I'm just going to see what would it look like in color. Now, interestingly, if I go to neural filters, part of Photoshop here, one of the options they have down here is colorize. So I can click colorize, and then it actually comes up with a version of the color. I click OK. And now what it's done is it's colorized the photo, except for the fact that it's actually recolored the the actual deck chairs themselves. So what I can do, this is why I did it on a separate layer, I will just mask that and then paint the original colors back in, because these are actually quite vibrant colors, and we had the blue, the green, the red. So anyway, basically what we're looking at is something like this. It's not done it completely right. The bit of sea under here has gone yellow instead of blue. Doesn't really matter. The point I'm trying to say here, though, is that with the blue sky, and maybe I would sort of boost the stones a little bit to go a bit more yellow, that the colour photo, the thing is that this is a bit like the flower. It's almost like a natural colour pop anyway. When you've got a large expanse of sky and a large expanse of beach, which are relatively uniform colours, then having coloured stripes of the deck chairs make it go pop anyway. So is it enhanced by turning the background black and white? And I'm not sure that it totally is. So at that point, or, you know, again, if what we were to do was we were to go to actually just turn the whole thing black and white. Now, black and white, we're not getting as much, but there's a potential here for playing around with it. If I take the red and I darken that down, let's make these stripes stronger. Okay, again, there's green stripes I can turn down here, and then I think there were blue stripes. I can, or is it cyan? No, cyan's hitting the sky a bit too much, but we'll go for the sort of slightly bluish And by creating these stripes more strongly, then what happens is it becomes about, actually, yeah, let's go back to the original rather than the colour version of it here. And so what we see here then is that as a black and white photo, it's then, to go back to the tonal contrast of those stripes against the plain sky and the relatively plain beach. That's what kind of makes this photo interesting here. So the narrative is actually about the tonal contrast, those stripes. Whereas in colour, it's about, we've still got this kind of colour pop because the colour, but I think that sort of, that mix isn't adding anything to it. The photo is better as a full colour photo, or it's better as a black and white photo concentrating on the stripes. So again, is another one of these where I would tend to say that by and large, I mean, again, in a crowd voted kind of thing, some people are going to go, oh, that's quite clever. I quite like that. I would have done that. And now it'll score better. But if you're really trying to think about this idea of colour splash or selective colour as a way of enhancing the photo, to make the photo better than it would have been in black and white or better than it would have been in colour, it doesn't really, you know, this I think is an example where it sort of misses on that mark. But thanks very much for sending that one in, Fenris, because I think that really kind of helps, again, illustrate the point that I'm trying to make with this. Right. What have we got here? Oh, Nicola's joined us and says, hi, Kim and everyone. Sorry for being late. Signal bad where I am today. Well, I hope it kind of sorts out and doesn't cut out too much for you as we go. Okay. Next photo then is from Nurije. And Nurije sent us in this one. And Nurije says, Selective Colour Image Challenge, part of an old hand-operated crane, which is still on display at the Exeter quayside. Okay, so there's a display on Exeter quayside. There's an old, and what we've got is this, you know, bits where there's still some of the original red paint on it, but largely it's rust. There's a lot of rust from the, you know, the hook. We've got, oh, what happened there? Wrong way. And, you know, we can see the rust of the chain and what have you. So, but we've got this kind of whole orangey red thing going on. And what Nurije has done is she's captured this colour and then black and whited the buildings behind it. Now, if we kind of stick then with the kind of theme that I'm going with, which is this enhanced by the selective colour process or not? Now, I think the thing is, because it's quite a busy background, if we just had this in black and white, then it wouldn't actually stand out as much. The building in the background, because there are things like this fairly strong white window frame and what looks up here like bits of probably quite strong sunlight, it's a relatively busy background. And although there's a slightly shallow depth of field, there's still enough of the background to be able to interfere with the picture. So if it was, now I don't know what colour the brickwork was here. Now, if it happened to be sort of a yellow brickwork, then this would stand out against it naturally. If the brickwork happens to be reddish, then what you might find is that there's a confusion as well. And so going the black and white is helping this to stand out. However, without knowing what the original is, what I would still kind of be tempted to do what I would be tempted to do here, I think, let's say that the background, that it was red brickwork, I would be tempted not to necessarily go for full black and white. One of the things I was talking about back in episode 264 was the idea of where you don't go full selective colour, but you do a semi-desaturation. So you take part of the idea, you just don't take it the whole way. And because what we're trying to do is draw attention to the key part of the photo. And in this case, the key part of the photo is this part of the crane. But by having black and white, it draws our attention to the fact that it's a selective colour image. And as such, our attention is drawn to the fact that it's edited using this particular method, which is maybe taking our attention away slightly from what it is we're actually looking at. And ultimately, this is the bit that why I nearly always have a problem with selective colour, is because we notice the editing process before we notice the actual photo and the message and the narrative of the photo. And when we take photos and we're putting them out there for other people to look at. It's because we're trying to convey a narrative. We're trying to convey, look at this pretty flower. Look at the way the light is catching from the sunset. Look at the expression on this person's face. Look at the arrangement of these flowers or objects on a table. Look at the the way the line is curving, or the contrast between the lights and the darks. There's something that we're trying to convey. Generally speaking, if somebody's looking at it and looking at the editing, they're not looking at or receiving the narrative that you're trying to express. And it's such an important point, this. And so I think we come back to this, and the problem is with it is that we are drawing attention away from the crane. Now, but if you have this problem with the fact that you want to be able to bring the attention to this bit of the crane, I think this photo will work better if you took that background and just sort of did a 50% desaturation. So it sort of fades into the background, but not in a way that anybody's going to notice it. It's still then going to make the front part of the crane naturally pop, as such, naturally draw our attention to it, but without our attention getting subtracted from it by going, oh, look, it's black and white in the background. Oh, she's done that particular effect. Okay. So I think it's one of these things where you're kind of on your way, but in a way, ultimately for the benefit of the photo, if not for the selective colour challenge, for the benefit of the photo, it will work better with a kind of 50% desaturation behind, I think, or even a 70% desaturation. I'd have to play around with a slider rather than a complete one like this. Meg likes this one. She thinks it's a great photo. Right, okay, hope this is all making sense as we're going. Next up we have Marilyn. And Marilyn says, although I'm not a fan of selective colour, your ideas were a good exercise in creativity for me. So what Marilyn has done is this one. And she says, this image was taken at a protest in Denver, and I found it to be a compelling story. As you know, the US is in constant political turmoil these days, but the message I wanted to convey was the importance of everyone casting a vote, and with that I selected the vote signs to colour. Okay, so this is an interesting idea. So what Marilyn has done here is we've got, excuse me, so we've got a scene, we've got a protest scene, people are walking along, they've all got these different signs being held up, they're all wearing their different clothes. It looks like probably a fairly chilly day, gathered by the fact that some people have got hats and scarves on, and coats and jackets and what have you. A little bit of sunshine. But they're all carrying, it's a very busy scene. And of all the different things that they are protesting against, so we've got what? Build bridges, not walls. Only love can drown out hate. I've had enough persecution and conditioning. Vote Democrat. What is it? Smash the patriarchy. So activist checklist. Okay, so there's lots of different things going on here. Where do you want to draw your attention to? And so what Marilyn has done is she said actually the bit that she wants to draw attention to specifically under this is the fact that the voting, that you can have all these ideas, you can have all these protests, you can protest against all these different things, but unless you get out and vote on it, nothing is really going to change. So the voting is the most important part. And so what she's done is she's done the selective colour specifically on the vote. So I think the idea is there. So when you're talking about the idea of selective colour, you're using selective colour specifically to draw your attention to the very specific part of the image that you want to, in what would otherwise be a very busy image, and things might get lost. The slight drawback I tend to feel with this one is the fact that the vote ones that you've gone for are really loud. I mean, these kind of pink, magenta colours here feel so overwhelmingly powerful that it's almost like that kind of day glow highlighter pen kind of colour, which grabs the eyes anyway. And I wonder whether, even in a colour photo, whether these would stand out anyway. So it feels like up against the black and white, these colours are just screaming to the point whereby it's almost painful to look at, it kind of hurting the eyes slightly. And I wonder if, again, kind of like I was mentioning with Nurije, for the benefit of the photo, if not particularly the selective colour challenge, but for the benefit of the photo, if you really wanted attention drawn to these bits and they did get lost, would be to sort of more slightly desaturate everything else. Not go completely black and white, but you just desaturate back a bit until the bits that you want to stand out that little bit more. Because I think, like I say, at the moment here, I get the idea. I think the politics of it, or, you know, as in like this is the bit that you want to draw your attention to, is there. I think the narrative is there. It just feels like because that kind of colour is so smack you between the eyes, that you are drawn to the fact that it's a black and white, and it's back to you're drawn to the editing side of it. And I think the editing side of it is drowning out the message. So I hope that makes sense, Marilyn. I mean, great idea. But I think if you want to really make effective use of the message that you want to get across with this photo, I think that you've got to kind of dial it back a little bit so that the editing isn't drowning out the actual message that you're trying to get across. So as you can see, this problem here of the editing drowning out the message is a common theme. It's a common problem with selective colour that we have all the way through it. Oh, Marilyn says yes, thanks, Kim. Okay, great. So let's move on then. So April next then, and April sent in this one, and April says, this is my entry for the Selective Colour Challenge. I tried my best to understand how to do it, and I do not know how, but I managed to make the door purple. Don't ask me to do it again. I tried, but I could not. Need to take lessons. This is on my bucket list. Anyway, story about the door is in my perspective, so I chose to colour that alone. Okay, well, what I would suggest, April, is go back and look at re-watch episode 264. Remember, you can fast forward, jump through bits, pause bits, replay bits. There's huge amounts of information in there. Or, for that matter, you can always, if you have a picture that you would like to play with and you're not sure how to go about it, but you know there's something in it and will benefit from it, then send it in for feedback. We'll just point out, actually, when it comes to feedback, that I have a new place to send images for feedback, which is kimairspodcast@gmail.com. For those who remember last week, I had it down here, felt it was just getting in the way. I've now put it up there for the moment. So if you want to send your images in for feedback, you want to send your images in for challenge, then kimairspodcast@gmail.com for the moment, at least, until it just becomes overwhelmed with spam. I've had this email address for barely a week, and already excuse me, or barely 2 weeks, and already I've had one or two spam messages coming in. So maybe it'll become unusable in the end, but anyway, send your image there. But that notion then that so yes, if you get really stuck, April, you can always put something in for the feedback session. I've got a feedback session next week as well. I'll mention that again at the end of the podcast. So this one then is April's taken this photo, and we've got the door in the wall, and it's a purple door, and it's against all this peeling painted. In fact, the door's got peeling paint, but we can see from the texture here that the general wood slats around it have also all got peeling paint as well. And I think this is another one where it's a kind of a case of, is it necessary? I suspect that the wall itself probably wasn't purple. Now, if the wall was purple, as well as the door, and you specifically wanted the door to stand out, then yes, maybe either desaturating completely or semi-desaturating in order to make it stand out, maybe makes a bit more sense. But if the wall was any other colour than the same colour as the door, then the door will have naturally stood out against it anyway. And as such, it becomes this thing. When we look at a photo like this, the first thing we go is, oh, it's selective colour editing. And selective colour editing is the first thing. And then we look at, it's a door with peeling paint, and then we notice that there's walls with peeling paint as well. But I would guess the thing that appealed to you, the reason you brought your phone or your camera to your eye when you saw this, was precisely the texture of the peeling paint. So it's another one of these examples where I feel that the use of selective colours probably actually downgraded, it's got in the way of the message that you're trying to put across. So, as we can see, it's a... hold on, what am I doing? That's what I'm trying to do. As we can see, that's kind of one of the things that we're up against. But thank you for sending that one in April. I hope that makes sense. But like I say, if you are still trying to get the hang of the selective colour and you really want to pursue it, or you've got a picture that you would really like to work out how to do it, you can send it to me in the feedback session and I can run down through specifically with that photo as well. Okay, next up then. Now we're going to go to Andy. And now the thing about, yes, this is the first one that I want to show, which is where selective colour is actually part of the story. So, no, not that one, that one. So what Andy says is, here's a selective colour image I created as part of a branding shoot for the lovely Jade, a local furniture upcycler. Don't judge me, he said. He's saying don't judge me because, yeah, it's a kind of, when I've said initially about the idea of selective colour, and he's, oh yeah, shot across the bows, he knows full well the debate that goes on in the about selective colour. But this is an example where he's used it quite deliberately. So we have Jade, and Jade is a furniture upcycler, and part of their branding and everything else is they've decided to go for this idea of selective colour. And the selective colour, so everything about the shot is black and white, and it's a kind of a good standard black and white studio photo, except what is happening is she's got the paintbrush going across her eyes with the face here, and we've got that little bit of yellow in there, and then we've got the flesh colour behind it. So in this case, what's going on, what's going on here is the fact that the notion of selective colour is a part of the actual story. And this, to my mind, is, if you're going to use selective colour, this is probably the best way of going about it, is you have to try and introduce the selective colour as a real part of, that's what the story is about. Otherwise, you're running up against this idea of, the editing is outweighing the narrative. But in this case, the editing is a part of the narrative. We know it's editing. We know that it's been done with a spot colour, but where it's actually drawing attention to. Now, you can then have a sort of secondary conversation about whether this is necessarily the best use of this idea, in that if you're talking about upcycling, I think for something like an upcycling thing, that if she's got, say, an old chair that's being repainted, then running the the paintbrush across it is maybe a way of doing it. What's the significance of coming across the eyes? I mean, it's a visually striking image, but how much of the narrative is coming across that? I think there's potentially other ways of taking this idea and playing within the narrative. One other thing I would suggest about with an image like this, Andy, is the fact that she's wearing a white top, and that white top is really grabbing a lot of the attention. There's there's a whole, 15 to 20% of the photo is taken up by her white top, which, when you're actually trying to draw attention to the eyes, the top is competing with it because it's so bright compared to the rest of the picture. Although this bit is colour, I tend to feel it's kind of competing. If she had a darker top, and if she was wearing a black top or a dark grey or something like that, I think then your eyes would be drawn much more to the place where you want. But just suggestions, ideas to think about. Susan says, brilliant, I love it. And Nadia says, stunning, Andy. So yeah, thanks for sending that one in, Andy. Like I said, it's the first one that I'm showing today where I really feel like you're getting to a point whereby the selective colour is actually a part of the story. So, okay, well, let's take a kind of quick notion here, whether this is the point you want to quickly run off to the toilet or you want to go and find the person selling the cigarettes and ice cream. If you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, and you would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. And just this little reminder as well, that with the podcast that I've set up because with the challenges and with the submissions for feedback and things like that, my inbox is kind of getting crowded. I thought I would set up a separate inbox. So kimayrespodcast@gmail.com. If you can kind of remember to send your images to that. I'm not going to not look at your images. If you do the usual way and send them to my ordinary email address, you can still put them in the Facebook group and the Flickr group. These things I would still encourage you to do, because when you stick your pictures in here, other people get a chance to see them as well. And in the week running up to it, if somebody's a bit stuck for ideas, sometimes this can kind of trigger a few ideas that they might help them come up with ideas to submit something as well. So yeah, still do these, but if you just want to submit something to me directly, then I would suggest the kimayrespodcast@gmail.com is now the best way to go. And thank you to, who was it? Marilyn, Susan and Viji, I think all, yes, Marilyn, Susan and Viji actually used that for the first time. So their entries in here were sent to that podcast, to that email address. Right, okay, so next what we're going to do then is we're going to go to Nadia. And no, not that one, that one. There we go. So Nadia sent in this one. And she says, hi Kim, this is one from my archive. It was taken a while back when I was experimenting more with editing. I'm not a great fan of selective colour, but this one did appeal to my taste. It's probably one of those that you will deduct smug points for. I wanted to bring out the bridge and the person as they were both of a similar colour. By putting the image into black and white, it made the sparks and the light trails from the fire spinning stand out more in the image. Okay, so this photo is taken from one of these fire spinning. Now, I'm guessing it's probably done in a way. So for those of you who haven't tried this before, I'm sure you've seen similar kind of photos. Wire wool is one of the ways you can do it. So you get, actually, I think I even have some here. I've not opened the back. Steel wool, this kind of thing. You can get bags of it fairly cheaply. Attach it to a piece of string, or what, probably wire rather than string, because string will burn off. And the idea is you set fire to it and then start spinning it. And then depending if the person doing the photography, then you have a delay, not delay, a sort of, 2-second exposure or half-second exposure or 5-second exposure, depending on. So generally speaking, you can do it at night time. And if you do it at night time, so say on a 5 or 10-second exposure, even though it's night, it's showing up the background. Then you can have somebody spinning the wire wool and you can see the sparks flying about all over the place. So that's the kind of shot that Nadia has gone for. But generally speaking, because we're talking flames, fire, that tends to be yellow. Tends to be yellow and orange with bits of white in it, by and large. Now, interestingly with this, what happens is now I have seen people do a selective colour essentially of the yellowy orange, and then everything else is in black and white. This is done by the 4th Rail Bridge in Fife. Could be the Fife side, could be the Edinburgh side. I'm guessing this is the Fife side. Anyway, you've got the 4th Rail Bridge in the background, which is one of these kind of iconic structures in Scotland, if not the UK, if not the world. And it's painted red. And we can see it here in the background. Now, what Nadia has done is she's noticed also that the person who's spinning the wire wool is dressed in orange. So it's that kind of orangey red colour. So the selective colour there, instead of maybe going for the selective colour of the yellow. What's Susan saying? Loving those sparks, Nadia, and the iconic bridge. Now, this is an interesting one as to how well it works, because by having what it is doing is, by having the colour there is a level whereby it's drawing attention to the bridge as the background. Excuse me. Turning the sparks to white, so they've all gone white, I kind of can't help but wonder that if it were yellow, if this was a full colour image, I think it would still be just as strong. I'm kind of undecided on this, to be honest. I understand what you're doing, that you're drawing attention to the bridge, but the bridge is the background to what's going on with the fire spinning. And the primary part of this story really is about the fire spinning, and then the bridge is there. It's part of the narrative, no doubt. Doing this against such an iconic background is a really great idea and a really interesting one. But I think to my mind, there feels like your brain's getting pulled in two different directions at once. On the one hand, you want to look at the fire spinning, and on the other hand, you want to have the background. But rather than the background supporting the fire spinning, you're trying to say like the background is more important than the fire spinning. And when you've got two competing narratives in the same photo, rather than a core narrative and then the other part of it supporting it, very often photos don't work quite so well. Now, it's not to say you can't have different narratives within a photo. You have a core narrative, and then as you go through it, you find other bits, and all these other bits enrich the experience of what the core narrative is. But when you have competing narratives, the eye isn't quite sure where to look. And so as such, it sort of lessens the effectiveness of the photo straight out. So I like the idea. I like your thought process with this, Nadia. I like the idea that you're saying, moving away from the obvious, and rather than saying, well, we just have to have the yellow flame part in as a selective colour. I want to draw out the bridge. But I think, again, it's this thing of, as a photo, does it work as a photo? Is the photo enhanced by using selective colour? And in this case, I tend to feel it probably isn't. I tend to feel the colour version may well have been a better photo to start with. So, yeah, thanks for sending that one in, Nadia. I hope what I'm saying kind of makes sense with it. Like I say, I like where you're going through. I understand your thought process on this. But we're back to this problem of why selective colour is such a difficult one to really get working effectively. So, yes, thank you for sending that one in. Okay, next up, we're going to Nicola. And Nicola says, hello, Kim. This is my take on the Selective Colour Challenge. My 20-year-old cat, Belle, exhibiting her permanently unamused look. I've changed the colour of her eyes a little, but I didn't want to make it to look too ridiculous and contrived. I'm hoping her commanding eyes help to tell a story somehow. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Okay, so what we have is Belle, the 20-year-old black cat, staring into the camera. And what Nicola has done is she's turned the photo into a black and white photo, but left the colour in the eyes, and maybe just enhanced the colour slightly to, get the point across. And what Nicola has also done is she sent the original, just so we can see, this is the quick unedited version. And interestingly, in the unedited version, our eye gets, whilst the expression on the face is, really what it's about, we are distracted by the red part of the carpet. And, and the colours in the background, kind of general kind of overhead light stuff aren't overly contributing. So given the fact that the colour scheme isn't necessarily that great for creating a great photo, and the photo is really about the cat, then going black and white is not necessarily a bad idea. The question then is having it black and white and the colour on the eyes, is that enhancing the photo any more than turning the image black and white in the first place? And again, we have this problem of the fact that because it's selective colour, we notice the edit first. We notice that we're dealing with selective colour. Now, this is really tricky because I'm aware of saying this while at the same time I set a selective colour challenge. So it is about the selective colour, but I'm still constantly fighting this bit about the idea that there's rare the number of times when it really works, because I think we have to say, would it work better actually just as a black and white photo? And if I take this into take it into here, and then let's just zoom in a little bit, and I'll go to the just draw out the black and white. And so I turn it black and white. Now we've lost a bit of the eyes because of but if I take the yellow or the green, let's sew in the green, the colour of the yellow, I can brighten the eyes in the black and white selection here. So that helps the eyes to stand out more and allows that expression that Belle has on her face, that kind of unamused, I'm not bothered about what you're trying to do here, it kind of comes out quite nicely. And so just by allowing, so in the editing process, just if the eyes are important, which they are, by brightening, because a dull eyes, you know, take it down like that, the eyes disappear. You know, where it was just kind of coming in and we're not getting the expression. So in order to get the expression, we brighten the eyes like that. And that way, as a black and white photo, I think it's fine as, you know, it's doing the job that you want it to. Whereas when we have that bit of green in, I don't know that the photo is overly enhanced by having the selective colour. Again, though, what we're back down to here is who's looking at it and how it's being, who's judging it. Because I do know just from experience that if you've got a photo crowd view bug guru shots contest where you've got a lot of very amateur level photographers who still think that spot colour is a new wow kind of thing, but they're also skimming through at high speed and subtlety gets lost, then something like this might actually work reasonably well. So under those circumstances, then maybe this is an image that will fit, much like Meg's Purple Flower. But as a more philosophical, as we're trying to develop our photography idea of when we should use this as an editing exercise, or as an editing solution, I should say, then is this the best solution for this photo? And I'm not 100% convinced it is. But yeah, I mean, thank you for sending it in. And I'm thanking you really genuinely. I mean, I might be criticising the photos, but I'm really, really grateful for you sending in the images. And I hope nobody's having some kind of rejection, kind of, you know, oh no, I sent it in, Kim's now saying bad things about it. It's not that. I greatly appreciate everybody sending it in, because it's really helping to emphasise and about the importance of this particular editing technique, much like the tilt shift as well. You know, there are very, very few places where it really works. And there's a core thing going on here, which is about what editing is about. What's the point of editing any photo? And the idea with the editing is to enhance the narrative and not detract from the narrative. And spot colour, selective colour, is just one of these, which is just this absolute minefield. It's such a danger zone because way too easily it can detract from the photo rather than enhance the photo. Okay, next up then, we're going to go to Viji. Okay, so let me move that over there. And this is another one actually, which I really think this is one where what Viji has done, she has absolutely nailed the idea of using the selective colour as part of the editing technique, as part of the story. So what we have here then is Viji's got these this pack of oil pastels. It's got all these different colours. She's got a board, and the bit of selective colour she's got is as though she is colouring in the banana with one of the yellow pastels. Okay, so like Andy's idea, the use of selective colour is integral to the whole narrative, because if you put this into colour, it wouldn't really make sense. You go, well, okay, there's a bunch of things. There's a yellow banana. Why is she holding a yellow pastel on a yellow banana? It wouldn't really be a story. If you put it into black and white, you don't know what colour's going on. And again, there isn't really a story. So the story is absolutely about the idea that you've got a black and white world and the banana is being coloured in by the pastel. Okay, so this is where I feel the selective colour editing technique is now integral to the story. If we're talking about our benchmark, our way of measuring this, would the photo be better off in colour than selective colour? Or would the photo be better off in black and white than selective colour? And if the answer is yes to either of these, that it would have been better in black and white or it would have been better in colour, then essentially our use of selective colour has detracted, has diminished our photo. Whereas at this particular photo, if you put it into black and white or you put it into colour, you diminish the photo. The photo stands on the fact that it is using this selective colour technique. We are aware that we're looking at an edit, but that is part of the story. Same that went with Andy's as well. Okay, so yeah, well done, Viji. I guess this is I'm really glad you sent this one in. I know Viji struggled an awful lot with this. I mean, what Viji said, I will say what Viji said. This time it was a real challenge for me. I tried so many photos and nothing was working out. Finally, I tried the still life shot of a banana and yellow crayons attached to the image to my email. And so this is my submission for the challenge. But I know Viji was struggling with this because there was a little bit of back and forth with emails across the week. And there was one point where I had this crying out from Viji going, I hate selective colour. Seriously, it spoils the whole photograph. And that moment of frustration is echoing kind of what I'm saying here, that in most cases it really does tend to diminish the photograph rather than enhance the photograph. But in this particular case, it does, in fact, it is the point of the photograph. Now, you can still like it or not like it, but you can't deny that the selective colour, that the use of selective colour is integral to the story of the photo. So, thank you very much for sending that one in, Viji. Other comments. Susan says, that's really clever, Viji. I love it. Marilyn says, well done, Viji. And Nadia says, great idea, Viji. And Nicola says, thanks for the feedback, Kim. And also, very lovely concept, Viji. Right. Okay, now, next one I'm going to take on to you. Lisa also says, great job, Viji. Next one I'm going to take you on is to Robert. Now, this was a really interesting one that Robert did, because Robert essentially reversed the idea of the selective colour. So here we have Robert says, I think this will meet your requirements for a good selective colour, I hope. I will say Robert sent this to me a couple of weeks ago because he knew he wasn't going to be about in time to he was off on holiday. Anyway, he says, this was taken about 6 months after the January 6th riots, the insurrection. The Capitol building was still closed to the public and a fence was erected to keep people away. I think the scene was reminiscent of those totalitarian novels by Orwell. This is not what Americans are used to seeing in our nation's capital, and I thought this photo represents the mood at the time. Now, what I find really interesting about this is Robert has gone the reverse. That rather than drawing our attention to the colour, he's drawn our attention to the black and white. And kudos to you here for this, Robert, because this caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting. I've not seen it done this way round, because it's, generally speaking, any time you do a picture which is part colour, part black and white, the eye always goes to the colour. And fine, we look at this and we notice the blue sky and that little bit of, tops of the green trees and maybe just a little bit of the little brickwork that's sort of part of the paving in the front. But the fence, the area closed, the bit, everything whereby if you were standing there and you walked up to the fence, you are looking at the Capitol building through the fence. And that has been done as black and white. The colour has been sucked out of the picture. And so as a kind of using selective colour or the lack of colour as a political statement, or layers of which you can read the narrative, I found absolutely fascinating. I really love the idea that I was just so, it just caught me so by surprise that actually then, that what has happened here is the direct opposite of the way we use selective colour. We've done, so what we have here is selective black and white. And if you said this to me just in a conversation where I didn't have a visual image in front of me, if we've just been sitting having a cup of coffee and somebody has said, oh, do you think you could do selective black and white instead of selective colour? I would have probably pulled the most awful face and gone, I doubt that very much. But there you go. He's actually managed to pull it off. So so really interesting idea. I think in terms of maybe other bits of editing, perhaps you're even for something like this, because you're trying to push it, maybe you could even up the drama with particular contrasts, slightly more dramatic sky. I'm not sure, but for the most part though, I love the whole concept idea of this, that is selective black and white rather than selective colour. So yeah, great idea there, Robert. Many thanks for sending that one in. Susan says, this is really interesting, Robert. You really thought about the story here. Okay, on to the last one, and then we'll do a sum up, and then you get to choose your favourite, and we'll run through, and then I'll tell you what's coming up next week as well. So next up then, or finishing off with then, oh no, actually tell you what, just before we get that to yes, so just a little to catch up on a little point earlier, you'll notice that Robert and Anne are currently in Scotland. They called in to see me, and on a Thursday evening we were at the local Indian restaurant out for a meal, and just to prove it, we have the obligatory selfie. So it's funny, we've gone all day chatting away and playing around with cameras and talking this, that, and talking photography and philosophy and all sorts of things non-stop. And then suddenly, right at the last moment, I just suddenly thought, oh, we've got to do the obligatory selfie. We've got to do the selfie just to kind of let the rest of the podcast know that we have in fact actually all met up. So took loads of photos, managed to find the one where everybody's looking least embarrassed by it. And so there you go. Went ahead. Meg says that was a really interesting photo shot, and Lisa says nice. Okay, so now what we're going to do then is we're going to the last picture I want to talk about then is Susan's, and Susan says, hi Kim, on this it was a wet and miserable day when she sent in the image, rather than the cool and clear day that we have today. I attach my submission for the Selective Colour Challenge. My choice is an image entitled Think I'll Choose Yellow. The original showed a pile of multicoloured rubber bands, but using the method you showed, I removed all the colour except the yellow, a first for me and a particularly tricky task. Now, Susan has in fact actually sent the original, so you can see then, this is the original photo. So in this case, what we have is all these different coloured bands. We've got the red, the green, the blue, the yellow. We've got the mannequin hand picking up the yellow one, and what she's done then is to emphasize that everything else has now become desaturated except for the yellow bands, and then she's titled the photo Think I'll Choose Yellow. So I chose the yellow color as selected, as that was the color of the band being held in the wooden hand. Included the original, looking forward to seeing some interesting submissions. So, I mean, interestingly though, if you're going to take an idea like this, what would have happened if you selected the red or the blue? You could have as easily done that, maybe changed the title and said, I'm not selecting red. Just have the grey one in the hand. It's an interesting one. It's kind of fun. I think you're pretty much, I think taking this idea then of selective colour, the narrative of the photo is about selecting a yellow band rather than any of the other colours. But interestingly, if we go back to this one, this does just the same job. I think I'll choose yellow, has selected yellow. But we can see then that there's other colours it could have chosen from. Whereas this one, we're not necessarily aware of what the other colour is. I think I'll choose yellow instead of maybe grey. So I think this is one of those where, is the photo enhanced by having the selective colour or not? And I think it's a close one. I don't know really whether it's necessarily giving us anything more, but at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily detracting too much either. Again, I can imagine that in one of these online photo competitions, this one could probably do really rather well. It's got that kind of interaction. You know, this is because this is interacting. You know, this is a photo set up to interact specifically with the idea of the selective colour. But at the same time, it's still kind of working in colour as well. Although, how important is it as an image on its own right if you don't have the selective colour? So I think this is kind of, you are now onto the kind of borderline of where maybe it is just working. Maybe, you know, if you're wanting to do selective colour, then maybe this is where selective colour is starting to work as an editing technique. It's still very obviously selective colour. We know that it's selective colour, but it is also part of the narrative. So we're kind of there, I think. But yeah, great idea. And I'm really glad that you gave it a go as well. And I think, so I suppose what we're doing then, if we come back to this idea, I think, and that, you know, just fantastic, well done to absolutely everybody who sent in a photo, because this isn't an easy challenge. You know, as said, going through it, you know, I mean, I've set a selective colour challenge, and then most of the photos that have been sent in as selective colour, I've gone, it would have worked better if it wasn't selective colour. You've done selective colour, you've done exactly what I asked for. And then I'm kind of not accepting the photo. And it's at the heart of the problem with this is because, generally speaking, I don't like selective colour as an editing technique because it's all about the editing technique. However, we have had examples this afternoon where the selective colour is a deliberate part of the narrative. And in those cases, then it works. Now, you can still decide whether you like the photo or you don't like the photo, but the point is that the editing technique is integral to the narrative. Whereas in so many of the photos, it's detracting or diminishing from the narrative. Or the narrative could have been made stronger by using a different editing technique and allowing other colours to be in the photo and not necessarily having to go with the full selective colour. So I'm hoping that when you combine what we've gone through in this podcast with everything we were talking about in podcast 264, that you will have a much bigger understanding of selective colour, when it might work, when it doesn't work, what you're actually up against excuse me, as a technique, and when ultimately you should consider using it or not, or consider not using it when you are editing your own photos. So I hope that all makes sense. Right. So next bit, right. So what I will do now is I will go back through the photos and you get to choose one. Okay. So what I want you to do, I'm going to go through the photos and I will go through them one at a time. You decide which one of the photos that I show you is going to be your viewer's choice. After your viewer's choice, I will hand out my top three. And everybody will get extra smug points for that. Everybody who sent in an image gets automatically 10 smug points, and then the viewer's choice will get a bonus 20 smug points, and then there's a bonus 30, 20 and 10 for my top three as well to come. So lots of smug points to come, and as we're kind of at the end of the month as well, this will dictate on who wins November's smug points. Before we get into this bit, currently Viji's sitting in the no, not Viji, where are we? Sorry, I need to scroll back here. Sorry, Nicola is sitting in the lead with 65 smug points, April second with 45, Robert's third with 30, and then Susan, Meg and Lisa are on 20 each, and then everybody else is on 10 or 15. So this could all tip the balance. So what we're going to do then is now I'm going to go through the photos and I want you to decide which one, just the one, that you think ought to get the bonus viewers points, and then I'll take a look and see which one gets the most. So we start off with this is Meg with the purple flower. You don't have to write it as we do it, but be ready to sort of type your thing in quite quickly so we're not loitering around too long. Second image is Fenris with the deck chairs. That's Fenris. Next up is Nurije and the crane. And for anybody wondering how you spell Nurije, it's Nurije. But if you spelt something close enough, I'll accept it. Then we have Marilyn with the vote placards being highlighted. Then we have April with her purple door. Then we've got Andy with the paintbrush going across the eyes for the upcycler. Then we're on to Nadia with her selection of, rather than selecting for the flames of the wire wool, going for the jacket of the person and the fourth rail bridge. Next up we have Nicola's Black Cat Belle with the unimpressed look and the green eyes. Then we have Viji with the colouring in the banana with the yellow oil pastels. Then we have Robert with his inverted black and white, selective black and white rather than selective colour. And then finally we have Susan's I choose yellow with the rubber bands. So now go ahead, type away into the comments here who your favourite one, who you feel ought to get the bonus 20 points. Excuse me. And then I can start tossing up and working out how that goes. And what have we got here? Well, okay, just type them in. I'll get a few, see how it goes. Got a couple typed in already. I'm never entirely sure how long the delay is between people typing and it appearing in my my feed. But while you're doing that, I'll tell you what's coming up next week while you're busy typing in your names in for who you feel ought to get the bonus points. Well, basically next week then is a feedback session. Okay, so this is your chance to get genuine feedback on your photos. So if you've got a photo that you feel might be working but not quite, something's not quite working with it and you're not quite sure how to fix it. If you've got an image which you keep putting in for the competitions and the challenges and you really feel it should be doing well, but for some reason it isn't, and you feel like you've got a blind spot, you're not sure what it is, or you've got concepts or you've got an idea, or you're like, maybe there's an editing process that you're trying to try out and it's just not working. There's potential in the photo, but you think it could be enhanced, then send it in. So at this point, we're going back to kimairspodcast@gmail.com, or stick it in the Flickr or Facebook groups. Send me your image, tell me what your sticking point is, tell me what you're having problems with, and then next week I can help you out with it. And without doubt, that kind of personal feedback, help with your photos, is one of the best ways you can improve your photography. And for anybody in any doubt, both Robert and Viji, who are probably the ones who probably sent me the most over the years, both attest frequently to the fact that they feel that their photography has helped be moved on by the feedback that they've got. Right, okay, so let's see what we have here. Where are we? Robert says Nicola cat shot. Susan says Robert. Meg says Robert. Nadia says Susan. Nick says Andy. And Marilyn says Viji. So we have 1 for Viji, 1 for Andy, 2 for Robert, 3 for Susan. 2 for Susan. No, hold on. So I'm getting mixed up here. Great idea, Susan. No, right. Sorry. Oh, actually, what? Only 6 of you have voted. Has everybody else run off? So, sorry, we've got Nicola's cat shot. We've got 2 for Robert, one for Susan, one for Andy, one for Viji. So Robert then. Robert is the selective crowd winner. So selective colour winner. So there we go. Robert's selective black and white is the crowd winner for this one. So congratulations, Robert. You get a bonus 20 smug points for your Capitol building in with the black and white gates. All right, so what about my choice? Where am I going with this? So for me, the standout winner is this one of Viji's, because I think for everything that I said before, in terms of selective colour, and it's okay for everybody else to have different ideas. The fact is each of us will judge in different ways. We've got different things that are appealing to us. For me, because I have such a difficulty with selective colour, because I always see selective colour as diminishing a picture, to find a picture which is actually really leaning into the whole idea of selective colour, I think for my money, this one is the one that really does it. I think everything about this is on target. The whole narrative, which is about colouring in a black and white banana to make it yellow and then using the yellow pastels to do it, is completely there. So for my money, Viji then gets the bonus 30 points. My second place for a bonus 20 points, I think, is going to be Andy. And again, because of the idea of it's what it's designed for. You know, the picture is designed specifically around the editing technique. So we know it's an editing technique, but that's what part of the story is. It's for the woman who does the upcycling and the painting and the varnishing and the bits and pieces. And so that's designed around that. My third place one then goes to Robert. So Robert gets an extra bonus 10 smug points for this one. Again, because it caught me by surprise so much, this idea of selective black and white rather than selective colour. And then what I will also do, I think I will give a bonus 5 commended points to Susan for the selected, for the band, for the rubber band as well. Because again, it's one of these where I tend to feel that the point of that, you know, it's there. The selective colour is a definite part of the narrative. It's part of why you've used the editing technique. So I hope that all makes sense. So congratulations to Robert, to Viji, to Andy, and to Susan. I will put all these bits together and tie it in with the... Plus, of course, that everybody who sent one in, you all get a bonus 10 smug points anyway. Plus, anybody who's left a comment here today, live, as we're doing the YouTube video, then the YouTube podcast, you also get a bonus 5 smug points. So if you've been sitting here watching, lurking, and you haven't actually left anything yet, you better get your name scribbled in quick if you want that bonus 5 smug points. If you're not watching live, you can always, and you're watching, you can still leave me a comment down below. In fact, actually, if you happen to be coming back and watching this, in the general comments underneath the video, leave me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on selective colour. Let me know whether you think it can ever work, whether you're impressed by any of the photos that you've seen today. You know, I think it's such a thing, or you've got examples of your own that you'd like to point us towards. Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, a few people kind of congratulating the winners here. So where am I? So that's basically it. Like I say, next week is a feedback session. Get your images in. I have space for 3 to 4 for a podcast, and it generally tends to happen on a first come first serve basis. Once I've worked out who the smug points, final smug points winner is for this episode, or for November, I'll be in contact with them to come up with the for the theme for December. And right, I think that's pretty much about it. Thank you once again to everybody who's taken part, all of you who've been leaving comments and coming back over, you know, continuing to support these podcasts. Susan says, that was really interesting. I still hate selective colour though. To a degree, I think you probably pretty much echo my sentiments there. I'm not going to say hate anymore, though, because I think that I have seen a couple of examples which have made me kind of go, oh, well, maybe it can be used under those circumstances. There's a limit that is very limited, but I just think there are times when, but the majority of times it's used, it just doesn't tend to be really enhancing. It's more likely to diminish the photograph than enhance it. Right, so that's us. Thank you ever so much. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.